And welcome back to Mr. Dragon Comic Review, coming to you live from Seattle, Washington, 1 week away from Emerald City Comic Con. As always, I'm your host, Daniel Doc Gentry, and with me are Woody and Alan. And I do want to apologize. I was going to put pictures up, but we've had some technical difficulties we had to hash out first. But hello, gentlemen. How are we doing?
Doing all right?
Very good. How about you, Doc?
I'm doing okay until we start talking about this comic. Batman No Man's Land, the first 5 books, which is, I gotta say, Woody, this is the hardest one to figure out where book 1 ended, book 2 started, kind of thing. But you want to give us some history with this one?
Well, this is a book that came out when Alex and I were in high school. It deals with a storyline where an earthquake hit Gotham, and it was declared a disaster area, and they basically sealed the city off and didn't let people have enough time to escape. So there's people trapped in the city, and it's an interesting, unrealistic scenario because like this would never happen. They would never refuse to let people out. But it's exploring people living in tough situations and having to resort to very base human conditions to survive. It's a book I never read before, so this is like my first time reading it, but to kind of address for you, there isn't really like a book 1, book 2 scenario so much as that it's just a massive, series that they put out that covered every single Batman comic of the day, like I think 5 books or something. And so it, went between, this story, like there might be 3 issues or 4 issues of Batman in a month, and all of them are part of the story. So it's definitely a much bigger book than we would normally be able to review. So the idea was let's look at the beginning of the story and determine, is this a fun story? Is it interesting? Is it something that we could recommend and see if people might enjoy reading it? And I've found it a rather fun read so far. For a story where Batman almost doesn't appear in the first 5 issues.
So yeah, that's part of the reason I'm angry with you. Alex, what did you think about this one?
Actually, I'm kind of surprised for one, Woody, that this came out, what, 90 something?
Yes. I don't know the exact
because
date, but
yeah. But
yeah.
My point is, it's interesting on that because you get a certain feel of like when certain things come out based off of like how storylines either get recycled and also how art is done, the way that printing quality is.
Sure.
And I gotta say, one thing that's interesting is one thing that this remind me of. What is that show called? Gotham.
Yeah.
So on television right now, they're doing advertisements for the latest season of Gotham, and it feels like they take a lot of the same beats that are going on within this comic book and make it into a new adaptation for that particular medium.
It would not surprise me because they, like shows like that, they usually just they read the books and then they script it based on what the comics have done in some form.
Well, I mean, it's a good way to go. It's like Batman. When was he originally created? In the late 30s, early 40s.
I think so.
He's got about almost 100 years of lore to go off of.
What's also interesting that it's very much in a particular time period too, because this one
he
place,
escaped from New York, right?
Well, no, I mean like this takes place in a time period when Barbara Gordon was still paralyzed and couldn't be Batgirl, so she's living in a tower somewhere, doing her oracle thing and being like the information source of the superheroes.
Yeah, being a high tech individual in a low tech setting.
Exactly.
I thought that was probably one of the best lines out of this book, of her basically like when Bats finally does get in contact with her, she's basically having problems being the information guru that she's been known as Oracle, and it's mostly due to the fact of she was able to have a great level of accessibility to information, and then now there's no power, there's no basic communication lines more than the fact of you go to a place.
Yeah, she has to
And
create a spy network to get her information.
oh yeah, and I thought also it was interesting the dynamic of how the landscape changed and also the characters of how they interacted. Like James Gordon was saying, I don't initially believe that these bat symbols that are graffitied up on the wall were done by Batman because that's not his normal MO.
Right.
Which I totally get. You know, that's that level of here's a character that does certain things within the law and granted above the law, but because the situation of the world has changed, the language of the world makes it where in these districts you graffiti to basically say this is my territory, or these are places that are safe, or if you come in here you're going to die.
I also like how we got to see like a really good map of the city and
Gotham
see like
Island.
yeah like the shape of everything and the these where the harbors are and all these locations that Batman runs around. It's not that big a city. It's actually kind of small, by looking at it.
And it's a mixed beast because it's like, in one hand, storytelling wise, when you do something like this of actually establishing a map, it does have that kind of thing of like the difference between, say, Springfield, The Simpsons, where things just exist enough, and setting in stone, like, okay, this is the area where this is. And when you're writing a story, you got to be super careful of like, unless you got the powers of Flash or Superman where you can travel within seconds, how do you get to certain places and, do your hero's work?
Well, it is also true that there's going to be like stuff on the other side of the river, right? So the city will extend much further, but, Gotham proper, right there on the island. Yeah. Interesting. Something else I've been looking at too is, from like just the lettering perspective, it is clearly a hand lettered book.
Yeah.
But
the style of lettering was quite interesting, especially those little boxes.
Yeah, and it's a little rough, but it's also typical of the way it was done, by hand, because you only get one chance to do it, and then if you mess it up, well, that's how it looks. But
there's this thing called whiteout.
That's not what I mean. I mean like how the balloons are done. But the other thing, the interesting I found was like you look at the narration for Barbara Gordon, and the boxes are clearly drawn by hand, but you look at the letters and the letters are not. So it's got this weird mix of digital, well, probably typewriter, a typewriter font versus a just regular hand lettering, and it's kind of odd, but it works well enough.
So any thoughts that you had, Doc?
This is terrible.
You don't like it, huh?
Hey, listen, if you're going to call something, Batman should be in it. Not just some blurb going to Congress as Bruce Wayne trying to get some help for Gotham.
Yeah.
I guess it would be fun for somebody, but I didn't. First off, the storyline between the people on the streets, those don't need to be 6 or 7 pages long. They definitely didn't need all the panels for all the people to discuss how much an apple would cost at auction. It definitely, in my mindset, I don't see all these bad guys like separating things and spray painting. I see Joker controlling everything and everybody and creating something. But I mean, I guess it was a unique Batman story, I could say. It's just not it's weird. It's weird to me, especially when you start talking about the other gangs that actually don't have some of the criminal minds that are running them. After what they were saying, 6 months, I wouldn't give it that long. They wouldn't exist.
Yeah, no, this situation could not exist. Could go on like this for 6 months without something being done. It's a pretty unrealistic problem, and that it's kind of one of those things that's tends to be a flaw of comic book writers, where they are not necessarily held to the same standard that the rest of the writing industry is. Like a situation this superficially written would never even be accepted by a publisher. But at the same time, I mean, it is kind of a fun book, I thought. I mean, if you can like just get the suspension of disbelief and kind of ignore the timeline issue, I actually found it kind of a fun read.
Oh,
And
it's the spell phantasmal force. Even if something happens that seems like it would be out of place, the person's mind will just make up scenarios where it's okay to be there. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I actually liked. I mean, I do agree with you that they probably should have cut to the chase with Batman a little sooner. But I felt that delaying it to issue 5, which most likely that's like the first 5 issues came out in the first month. But like delaying it to issue 5 when Batman first appears, I thought made the heroic entry a bit more dramatic. Like I was actually kind of like, oh, neat, he's here, excited about it almost to a degree. When they set up the desolation of it and the hopelessness of the situation, then suddenly the hero arrives, and that was cool.
I didn't get that far. I'm gonna be honest.
Really?
I did not. I was reading, and I think I was somewhere in book 3, and I was like, I don't want to read this anymore. And I put it down because I love you, Woody, but I got other to do.
Well,
and if a book gets me, if the book gets me and draws me in, and if you're doing this from what I was reading on this, when you guys were talking about the date, I looked it up. It said it was dictation of books from January, February 1999 to December, and then they made it in one big graphic novel. And like everything else, if the first episode the first issue doesn't make you want to come back and read, I don't know how it got that far, except for everybody drank the Batman Kool-Aid by then.
I think that's what it is, where it's like, this is probably one of the situations where it was a hyped up event, because I remember this being hyped up when it first came out. And if you were already reading the Batman books, you were going to be on board for the story, and they knew that they would have you for a couple of months. Like, you're already going to read it. So, but as far as like an entry point for a brand new reader, I mean, yeah, you're not going to see Batman for, until issue 5. So clearly the book failed for you in that regard. No,
and I get you, and I think it's interesting to think of like the different mediums. Like, imagine if this was a television run, and big titles basically saying No Man's Land, Batman.
Yeah.
And I can get within a season or within a show that you have like your normal cast of characters and villains and such, but there's got to be like that invested interest where you have your other stories going on, but your main character's not there. And I thought this was an interesting setup, but this felt like a what's the word? A prelude. Basically, this is just enough to know what's going on. Yeah. This is what's happened to Gotham within this part of the multiverse of DC, and issue 5 felt like that's where it could have started, or at least getting into it. That, and also, to be honest, I skipped, I think, number 3 or 4 because it was Azrael.
No, Azrael's not in it so far that I've seen. It was
there was another guy in there.
I didn't see Azrael at all. I saw Bat. You might have read a little further though.
To be honest, with one of the problems of this book, like Doc, you were mentioning, I felt it was kind of hard to find out. Like, this was basically issue 1. This was issue 2. This was up to number 5. There was a couple of times that I had to go back to the very first page where it said like, page whatever, and then this is what it was. So I must have read more, but at the same time didn't feel like I got anything out of it.
It might have been just the short stint that we did, and obviously we couldn't have gone much further. I think we probably should have cut in the middle of it somewhere, only because, like I said, halfway through book 3, I'm like, I'm done. I am so done. I'm working to read this, and it's not even working to do that. And I will say that I got 3/4 of metal dice, or not metal dice, but a dice, not tower, but a dice tray done. So for my metal dice with a bunch of leather, and doing some unique ways of doing it, because I would literally have to take a break, and then I needed my mind to work a little bit because it wasn't working. And so I went into this project and then came back to it, and I was kind of hoping at some point it would just catch on and go. And I did get a little excited when Batgirl came on it, but it didn't last long. Yeah. And then it went back to this other stuff, and I was like, I'm done. Okay, I get it. She's not Oracle. Batgirl's here. Batman's not in the city. Everything's gone to crap. Can we get to where we need to go?
Yeah.
Right. And you know, it's like I thought Batgirl was an interesting add to, like, you know, expand on the mythos of this story that's going on with what's going on with Gotham in this new take of, like, this escape from New York is the best way that I would say that this book feels like.
I think that was the introduction of that version of Batgirl for the first time.
And, you know, I thought it was fine enough. And it's like, I love some of the dialogue within that, the way that it was scripted of, you know, she saves a couple of kids from gangbangers. And one of the statements that she says is like, you know, how do you know that I'm not Batman?
Yeah.
Because do you really think that a thug would come up and say to his hoodlum friends, like, I just got my butt kicked by this woman in, you know, spandex and tights, and she was dressed up as a bat. No, this guy's 7 foot tall and, you know, like Arnold Schwarzenegger, you know, proportions and such.
Yeah. And
he kicked the crud out of me.
Yeah, but even for comic books, she's hot, so I think I would admit it too. Like, couldn't fight her, man. She's not. I guarantee you, she's not wearing a bra under there. I was distracted in the fight. Like,
I actually really like that scene as well. I thought that was well thought out, and the reasoning made sense, because it's like, that is true. Batman, he wants to be seen. He wants people to know he exists, but he's still, like, you see just enough to have the mystery. He's like he's like a Las Vegas character. He's all about the performance.
And yes, internet, we know if we put him up against anybody, Batman will win, because blah 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 blah, and you all drink the Kool-Aid.
There's actually one thing that I didn't care for. One thing is that I was looking at the scene where Oracle's talking to some of the other characters, and you got, like, you see Robin and you see Nightwing, and Nightwing is in the same place as Superman, right?
Wait, where was this?
Maybe it wasn't Oracle.
Oh, no.
Like,
yeah,
I think it was Oracle.
Yeah.
Okay.
You see Nightwing, and then you see Superman in the background, but you assume it's Superman. You don't see Superman in the background.
Well, okay, it's Superman. And it's like, why wouldn't Superman be here dealing with this crisis? It's like, it would be better if you just don't have him in the book at all.
No, it's fine, because he's not an American citizen anymore. He's a citizen of the world. So it doesn't matter what happens in America anymore. So it's all good.
Well, but they've made it so that the people living in Gotham aren't part of the United States. So
yep. So it's not their problem. See, done.
Yeah.
That was so ridiculous to me. I can't. Speaking of Superman, that's the most.
Yeah.
But whatever. It didn't feel like a Batman book to me. It didn't have, Batman didn't have the exact thing he needed at the exact right time to stop the earthquake. So that would have been Batman, because according to the internet, Batman would have known the earthquake was coming, and he would have done something to the city to stop the earthquake from affecting the city before it happened. Sorry, I am going to pick on every single one of you, because, gosh darn it, you could be like, hey, Batman versus the indestructible this, and everybody's like, Batman, duh. Like,
Batman cannot stop an earthquake, but he might have access to Superman to do something about it.
Have you not read these comic books? Batman can do anything. If you give him enough time, he can invent something to stop it. Don't tell me he can't stop an earthquake.
I think Batman works best as a street-level character. Like, he has gear, but he shouldn't have anything. I don't agree with that aspect. I don't think that the Bat God...
He has the greatest superpower ever. Money.
Yeah. Yes, he does.
And time.
Money
plus time can create kryptonite.
So he comes in as supervillains, throws money at them, and knocks them out. Yeah.
Or buys them off. Hey,
Here's
Joker, you want to be the new Robin? Here's $100,000.
Yeah. Throw money at the problem. So...
He'd be mad not to agree.
You're never going to get a positive thing out of me about Batman books. The best Batman book we read was Earth 1.
Yes, that was
and that's
great.
because the first 3 pages, Batman got his butt handed to him and his stuff stopped working right, and it was great. And for me, that is a great comic book because I'm sick and tired of every argument being like, the Batman, because the Batman.
Mm-hmm. Did we ever review the second one?
No.
Okay, then we are going to.
Yay.
No, the second one's awesome. He goes up against the Riddler.
DC doesn't need our help. Let's jump into somebody who needs our help. It's getting some comics out there.
Well, traditionally on comic book shows like this, Batman equals views.
Yeah, all right, bring it, Bat people. Write me things on YouTube and send me emails. We don't hide it. It's right there. mdreviewcast@gmail. Bring it. Bring it. Batman is the 3rd most overrated DC comic character of all times.
Them's fighting words. You're going to get death threats.
Yeah, number 1 is Superman. Number 2 is Flash. And they're actually tied for first. I actually think Flash is more overpowered than Superman.
I have a comic book where the Flash is running in the sky because he can press his feet down fast enough to condense the molecules.
Of course he can. Of course he can.
It's the most ridiculous bullshit.
Of course he can. Because he can, vibrate so fast he just disappears from our reality into another reality.
Yeah.
It got a bunch of people into quantum mechanics, and I love it because I talk to these people being a mechanical engineer, but yeah, everybody gets into quantum mechanics and goes, not even how that would work.
Yeah. Yep.
But that's all right.
Good old Flash.
I will say, just on my defense, I love the idea of Batman, and that is a non-superhero figure being able to be smart enough to deal with super level problems. Mm-hmm. And I love that. Through the writings and everything, the internet's not wrong. Of course Batman's going to win, because in every Batman comic book ever, whatever device or whatever he needed, he can get. It might take him to the end to get it, but he will get it, because like Alex said, the number 1 superpower of every superhero is money.
Yep.
Thought I would like this more because Batman wasn't in the first 5 issues, pretty much.
Well, when I picked this book, I had not read it, so I was going in cold, just like the rest of you guys. I just I had it. It looked like a fun read, and I thought it was a fun read. I actually rather enjoyed it. I don't know if I'm going to continue reading it just because I'm busy, but from what I read, the arrival of Batman was enough, like at that moment, to make me want to keep going. And the kind of like they tease the Joker, and it's like, oh my God, now he's showing up. What's he going to do? And there's the whole drama with Commissioner Gordon having to cross the line to restore order and save everybody. It's like there's all these things going on that may have taken a little while to get him going, but all the pieces are in place for a dramatic story, and I am very curious to see where it's going to go.
To a certain regard, I think if this book was redone as like a Jim Gordon, in this like setting of this being no man's land, and just going on to his perspective and like what he's dealing with, I think this could have been a much more interesting read. That it's the street level, it's what's going on, Batman, is he dead? Is he not? What's going on with this Batgirl? A lot of mystery and everything else is going on. But at the same time, the way that this title just felt, it was trying to do a bunch of different things and saying like, okay, like this writer did this story that, kind of corresponds with this, but at the same time, it was just enough of like, it was separate enough that it felt like, escape from New York, but you do your own thing.
I have a feeling that just a bunch of guys are sitting around the table like, all right, the end of this Batman series is coming up. What are we going to do next? And somebody in the corner, some intern, being honest, just said, it's Batman. You can do whatever you want. People will buy the comic books. And the guys at the table were like, no, you don't understand. It's way more sophisticated. He's like, I'll bet you. Give me 12 issues, and I'll prove to you that people will buy anything. And he's like, go for it. And he's like, Hey, and heads up, first 3 issues, we're not going to talk about anybody important. We might have hints, but we're going to have a lot more pages of people you don't know instead of the people that you do know. And that's when everybody in the place is like, you're getting fired off this, right? And he's like, we'll see.
Yeah. Well,
but it'll be legendary.
That might be how it happened. I mean, that's kind of how it happened with the death of Superman, from what I've heard. So, well, shoot, we're running out of time.
Well, we got 5 minutes.
Oh, okay.
We started late because of the technical difficulties.
Oh, okay. Because I thought, in the past, we've, had that happen. We had to end exactly on time.
Yeah, I run a tight ship around here, but don't say I'm not a benevolent DM either. We started 5 minutes late. Here's your extra 5 minutes.
Yeah. But a benevolent dictator of management.
So I guess final thoughts then?
Yeah, go for it.
Well, as I said, I enjoyed the book. I don't know if I'll be able to keep reading it just because of time and how busy I am, but I would want to. This successfully hooked me, and I found the story leading up to Batman's appearance to be, compelling enough and interesting enough that I do want to see where it goes. And I probably will finish reading it at some point when, just depends. I'm just being a busy guy writing stuff and getting ready for a major Comic-Con in a week.
Less than a week. Yeah, go ahead, Alex.
So I thought art-wise it wasn't too bad. It definitely felt like something that could have been late 90s, early 2000s, the way that it was just illustrated. Story-wise, obviously I don't feel like I got invested into it either, but I can see certain snippets that came from other stories that were definitely put into this part of the multiverse of Batman, and also stories that have been extracted from this material, like I said, Gotham. So if you're into Gotham, this might be an interesting read to you, as to get like a better sense of like what their kind of story is going. But definitely check it out for yourself and make your own thoughts.
On the art, I didn't think there was anything lacking. It felt more nostalgic. I get what you're saying about it being mid-90s or late 90s, because, well, it was in the late 90s. So, but it had more like nostalgic when you look at the streets. When somebody's looking down, it definitely has that almost accented up a little bit, like the old comic books used to do. Windows are just kind of drawn in haphazardly for your imagination to fill in. And I like the feel of that. I do. Storyline is the only thing that I felt was bad here. I didn't mind the lettering. The lettering was, again, do right. I found it to be weird that Barbara's thought bubbles were all pink with a purple border. Like, I thought that was an interesting, really weird. I love the character of Oracle, but I like how that was like my only favorite part in this. The only good part in this. I'm sorry. Whew, I need more sleep. Was when she said she's no longer the Oracle, she's now like the Chronicler. Mm-hmm. I kind of laughed at myself because the R makes it a bad guy, and that made me giggle. Nobody? That's so... Never mind. Get out of here. Overall, I was not impressed by this book. It didn't... Like I said, I didn't even finish. I didn't get to 5. I didn't get to the big Batman reveal because I lost interest so bad in this book. I did read enough of it. I'm not saying it's a bad storyline. I'm saying if you're going to call something Batman, it really should have Batman. At least I'm going to throw it in the first... I'll give you the first 3 comics. Like, put them in there. So, something, not a blurb on a TV about Bruce Wayne going to Congress. That was stupid. But, make it what it is. But I guess for some people it's cool. Yeah, And I'm not just saying the Kool-Aid drinking Batman people, even though I think they're represented on this panel. And I might be just being vetoed by that alone. But the fact that it was, like, I get it was a lot of setup for a little payoff. And then, Joker in a blurb, Penguin in a blurb, but 3 pages of 2 thugs talking on the street. That's what lost me. If you can get past that, it's not a bad book. And I bet you the story does pick up, because if it didn't, it probably wouldn't have made it to 12 issues. Of course, it had Batman on the title, so who knows. But those are my final thoughts. Anything else you guys want?
Well, we're going to be at Emerald City Comic Con in a few days at booth 1812. We're going to have all kinds of great stuff, copies of our comics, other swag, so please come out and check us out. I suppose it should be mentioned that I'm not sure if we're having a show next weekend, because we're going to be at Emerald City, and it may be difficult to pull it off.
We might not have a show, but I was planning to record questions with people.
Fantastic.
On my iPhone.
That works for me. I like it. I mean, like last year when we did the show at Emerald City, we were able to find a space inside of Kinko's. We may be able to do that again, but not all of us would be able to attend. You know, I wouldn't be able to get away from the booth.
Oh, you guys got this then. I'll handle the booth.
Okay. Yeah. I got to be there.
Anyway, yeah, come on out and see on what booth is that, because you always forget to tell them which booth, Woody.
Well, I just did, but I'll say it again. It's 1812.
There you go. From all of us to you guys, by the way, read more comics, keep it nerdy, and live your dreams.